Let's go back to the women of ancient Egypt. Their images seem to fight back at the idea that they're Caucasian, almost insulted by that notion. The thick lips seem to be prominent, the broad nose very established, and the face having this overall centered look about it. But as obvious as these features are, there's still some people who go out of their way to say that this is not enough information to dismiss the idea that they were Caucasoids of any kind. Instead, they say that the yellow skin of the portrayal of Egyptian women is a literal thing, and that the other facts that contradict this are merely non considerations. But we will prove today that the yellow skin of ancient Egypt is just a religious portrayal mimicking the color of the stars, the color of gold, and the color of the kings and queens. But first, let's start with the lips of this woman. No person has these lips outside of Africans, and I don't care who you talk to. Nobody has them. Look at them, stare at them. Doesn't this face scream African to you? I say to you today that the color yellow that you see portrayed on women is actually not the color yellow. Instead, what they're trying to portray is a glow. Glow, like shining, like the stars in the moon. That type of glow. But because they don't portray it with anything else, they portray it with the color yellow. And some people mistake this yellowy color as a complexion. It's an version of a glow. And you will see, I will prove it. First, let us look at this false interpretation of Hatshepsut. First, we get the real statue from ancient Egypt on the one that's a statue. And then you get the, I don't know, AI recreation, which tries to portray her as a European. And as you can see, they're doing a lot to try and resist certain features which are present in the statue in order to maintain a European appearance. Like, first of all, the lips. If you notice, Hatshepsut's upper lip is equal or bigger than her lower lip, which is a typical African trait. The lips get this full lip appearance, not because they look full lips like other cultures. People give the appearance of a full lip, but because they have a full lip. But if you look at the white version, they couldn't resist but make the lips smaller by force. They tried their best to make them smaller. And this is not even the worst part for them. This is only the beginning of their crushing. And like I said, her skin color will not be yellow, but it will be portrayed with a glow that resembles the stars and the moon. Ironic that her name has to do with being birthed by the moon, as it says on her mother's post or her mother's painting, that the god came down and impregnated her mother, thus giving birth to the divine Hatshepsut. So let's get something out of the way real quick. This is Amoze, her mother, Hatshepsut's mother. Her name, Amoze, means born of the moon. Hatshepsut's name is something along the lines of the great mother or the great lady. And I've already given you a piece of my argument by showing you Hatshepsut's mother. Notice how her skin color is not yellow, but instead brown. But wait a minute, weren't ancient Egyptian women portrayed as yellow? Well, no. So why is it important for me to show you the mother instead of just showing you Hatshepsut? Well, first, I want any excuse that could be used, like when people say Hatshepsut was portrayed as brown because she wanted to come across as a man, and men were portrayed as brown. You notice that the mother what didn't want to be portrayed as a man, but yet she is painted as brown. So that excuse flies out the window. Secondly, I want you to notice that her skin color is hereditary, not a one off where Hatshepsut is shown with a brown skin color, but it's only her in her family. Instead, we look here and notice her mother. And there's a divinity about woman in ancient Egypt. A lot of the times, the woman who got married would be priestesses in some way or have some royal religious role to play. But let's look at Hatshepsut's images. As you can see, Hatshepsut blurred the lines between male and female in her portrayals because she wanted to portray herself as the ideal king but still rule as a woman, because she alludes to her femininity, as some of these descriptions that come with the images say. And she does this over and over again. And you will notice, again, when I get to the evidence, that she portrayed herself as brown, but then in some areas let her femininity out by giving the conventional yellow or the glowy color because it's not actually yellow. And there it is, the bust of Hatshepsut cementing her skin color. In almost all her pictures, she's portrayed this way. And again, I would not be surprised to find a yellow version of her, as I've shown in that first image, that seems to show her glow. But let's go to writing, and then we can return to her grandmother. That's what I said. Yes, her grandmother. She is the biggest evidence. The king himself, the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Makere, aka Hatshepsut, taking the measure Haku of the electrum, laying the hand on the of heaps, first instance of doing the good things, measuring of the fresh myrrh unto Ammon, Lord of Thebes, Lord of heaven, the first of the harvest, of marvels of the countries of Punt, the Lord of Munu, Thoth, records then in writing, Sefket counts the numbers, Her Majesty herself is acting with her two hands, the best of myrrh is upon all her limbs, her fragrance is divine dew, her odor is mingled with punt, her skin is gilded with electrum, shining as do the stars. In the midst of the festival hall, praise to the Lord of gods. They Lord Makere Hatshepsut in her divine qualities because of the greatness of marvels which have happened for her. Never did the like happen under any gods who were before since the beginning. May she be given life like Ra forever. So there's a lot going on here. First of all, she portrays herself as a man in the beginning and calls herself king. And then you notice how she switches in the middle and portrays herself as a woman, including talking about how bold she is. And if you look at the original translation, the original writing, this would show this yellowish skin that is portrayed by females, as you can see in the notes at the bottom. And secondly, you noticed that she is portrayed to a star, which again, I said in the beginning, kings were also thought of in this way, but they weren't painted because the paint thing was associated with females. So they were painted brown, even though they were associated with stars glowing, as you saw in the text. And of course, Hatshepsut was shown with this baldness, And you notice how it's not yellow, it's bold. This bold word meaning shining with yellow is actually portrays the yellow that is associated with females. But that's not good enough, is it? I've got one more. I mean, of course, we've already looked at Hatshepsut, and she's not portrayed as yellow at all in any of her portrayals, whether she is female or male, except if you count that first statue that I showed you, in which she's portrayed as yellow from head to toe, but certain things of that statue would have not been yellow because they have nothing to do with her divinity. Even the portrayal of divinity only stops at the skin, not making like bowls or hats divine. Even hair color remains in its naturalistic. You'll notice this with a lot of gods of Egypt, even though their skin color has something to do with being divine. Their hats and everything else seems to be the exact same color as they are portrayed in nature. So this is Senseneb, and as you can see, she's portrayed with brown skin. And in her next image, she's portrayed with some brown and some yellow. And in her Shapti, she's portrayed with yellow. And again, this yellow is still just a portrayal of divinity or some kind of praise, because colors were done like that. But if you look at this image, you can see that they clearly saw ancient Egyptian women as brown. As you can see with this image, the women are portrayed in the same color as the men. And they're on a boat and they're basically mourners, the woman on the top. And instead of the typical yellow, they're portrayed with brown, which is not strange because a lot of times they were portrayed as brown, but the yellow could be substituted in. Now, if you want to say that the yellow was really their skin color, you have to then justify why sometimes they're portrayed as brown. Keep in mind, men are never portrayed as yellow. So you can't say that the men turn brown. They don't. Clearly, they're always portrayed as brown. What about the woman? Why are they yellow and then sometimes brown? But remember that the skin is just one part of it, and I don't believe that it's the full part of it. I mean, look at this statue here from the Amarna period. This is either Nefertiti or Akhenaten. They can't decide which one, but it's one of the two. Look at the size of those lips. Look at the face. It's almost like these statues are just refusing to be European or Middle Eastern. And if you look at the next image, first of all, something you'll notice is the lips, when they're huge, they kind of make sense on females. And a lot of people portray that as like, okay, it has to do with being female, it has to do with having lush, giant lips and whatever. But when you see it on the males, then you realize that it's just a feature of the face rather than some selective stylist thing because of beauty. And of course, like I've showed you with other cultures, they didn't have this feature. It's funny how they'll go left and right talking about which is what and what is what. But let's get back on the Kem thing a little bit, just to show something. You see, this is Amun Kem, or Amun the Black. And as you can see, his skin is covered in black. This is supposed to be literal and symbolic because he's known as the Kemet. And the Kemet is someone who is known as complete. So the black color represents completion, because black could represent completion. It could also represent fertility. It could also represent a lot of things. It could represent negativity as well, but in this case, it represents positivity. Now, to address the final crowd, the people who say Actually, whenever a skin color is portrayed, it's the accurate skin color. So the yellow ones are yellow, the brown ones are brown, and all that other stuff. Well, what skin color is this? And this skin color was also put on by her son, and this person is related to eventually Hatshepsut and all these other people. I will leave you with this. This is a statue of Amenhotep III. And if this person doesn't look black to you, we have nothing in common, and you should probably not even talk to me ever again or even try to communicate with you. Because if you can't see that this is a black person, then we have nothing to talk about. Also, the last thing, keku is a word that means darkness. We'll talk about it next time. It's a word that comes up the same as kem, which means black. Keku is going to come up and it's going to show that some people in ancient Egypt were called keku, which means darkness, and was also used in the same way that kem would be used symbolically to mean creation and physically to mean someone whose skin has darkened